In the forgotten reaches of the galaxy, humanity was the punchline of a long-running cosmic joke. To the vast alien empires ruling the stars, humans were a mystery, an insignificant backward species hardly worth acknowledging. Their technology? Crude. Their population? Small. Their reputation? A laughingstock. The Galactic Council had dismissed them as a blip in history, a footnote easily skimmed over. They were considered weak, powerless, irrelevant. But the galaxy didn't know the truth. It wasn't that humanity lacked power, it was that they'd learned to survive in the face of total annihilation. They weren't ignored because they posed no threat. They were ignored because they had learned how to hide. No one could have predicted what would come next. The proud empires of the galaxy, the Zorathians, the Thrinians, and others, saw humans as little more than spacefaring children. They believed humanity's steps into the cosmos were temporary, an amusing detour soon corrected by galactic reality. How could such primitive beings rise to anything more? They couldn't comprehend the truth, that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its tech or ships, but its sheer, relentless will to survive. Humanity had no home but Earth, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. That desperation bred something more powerful than any beam cannon or energy shield. It bred heart, and that was something the galaxy had long forgotten. On one seemingly mundane day, the Zorathians decided to end the human farce. They would strike Earth, wipe out humanity, and ensure their name never again echoed through the stars. To them, it was routine, a conquest like any other. Earth was just another dot on the map. Their fleets gathered. Humanity had no idea what loomed. They'd spent their time quietly, fixing their own problems, building slowly, focused inward. They had stayed out of galactic conflicts. They weren't part of any great alliance. They weren't feared, but appearances deceive. Because while the galaxy ignored them, humanity was preparing. For decades, humans had been building in secret, advancing, experimenting, evolving. Their technology grew sharper, their resolve harder. They had studied the empires, noted their patterns, understood their flaws. And though the world seemed quiet, it was only the calm before the storm. The Zorathians launched their attack. They expected submission, terror, panic. Instead, they found silence. Their first wave entered Earth's orbit and immediately encountered strange anomalies. Communications failing, sensors scrambled. It wasn't interference from Earth's defenses. It was something far older, something laced deep in the space around the planet. Before they could regroup, a human warship emerged. It was nothing like the elegant constructs of the other empires. No gold embellishments or ornate curves. It was harsh, scarred, brutal. Built not to intimidate but to destroy, it wasn't part of a fleet. It wasn't known to any council. It was something forged in darkness, an instrument of war bred in secrecy. The Zorathians had never seen anything like it. The ship opened fire. The impact was immediate. A single volley and an entire wing of the Zorathan fleet disintegrated. The humans didn't just resist, they annihilated. The alien commanders were stunned. They scrambled to regroup, but chaos reigned. Their confidence shattered, their coordination broken. They watched helplessly as more human vessels appeared, small, agile, efficient. The galaxy stopped laughing. The humans weren't the frail species everyone believed. They were something else, something dangerous. Their vengeance wasn't theatrical, it was surgical. They fought not for conquest, but for existence. The Zorathians tried to rally, but it was too late. Earth's defenders were prepared, and they weren't interested in negotiations. The mistake had been made, and it was irreversible. As the Zorathan ships fled in disarray, the humans broadcast a single message across the stars. Never underestimate us again. That message struck a nerve. The myth of human weakness shattered. The empires that had scoffed at them now reconsidered. The council, once smug, found themselves forced to reevaluate everything. But the war wasn't over. It had only begun. On Earth, hidden leaders emerged, military minds and strategists who had been preparing for this day. Their work, long kept in the shadows, was now the world's last line of defense. The fleets they'd built were fewer than the grand empires, but each ship was a weapon of calculated fury. Earth, once the joke of the galaxy, had become its reckoning. The Zorathians, humiliated and enraged, refused to accept defeat. Pride demanded retaliation. They called on their allies, twisting the Galactic Council into action. Now the Council had to decide: continue to treat humanity like an accident, or admit the truth and prepare for war. Some argued for peace. Others, prideful, wanted blood. While the galaxy debated, humanity prepared. They weren't naive. They knew more would come. They didn't celebrate. They fortified. They studied alien tactics. They adapted. They improvised. And then they struck back. In a surprise offensive, human ships appeared in Zorathan space. Smaller, faster, and wielding new experimental tech, they hit targets with stunning precision. Their weapons weren't elegant, but they were effective, deadly. The Zorathians panicked. Every assumption they had made about humanity crumbled. The humans weren't weak. They weren't lucky. They were predators, cornered and fighting like hell to survive. What began as retaliation became revolution. Other species, once crushed by the Council's boot, began watching humanity with new eyes. Could these upstarts be the force to topple the empires that had ruled for eons? The idea spread. In back rooms and war rooms, the oppressed whispered the same hope. Humanity might be the key. The Zorathians saw it happening, and they were terrified. More than ships, more than weapons, the humans had sparked a movement. Their refusal to die inspired something dangerous: belief. The Council fractured. Some wanted to end the war, others demanded Earth's destruction, and while they argued, humanity advanced. For every Zorathan attack, the humans responded with fire and fury. Their ships, ghosts in the void, moved with ruthless precision. Their pilots didn't fight for glory or territory. They fought for survival. They fought like nothing else in the galaxy, and the message spread. This wasn't just about Earth. It was about balance. The old powers had failed to see it coming. And now, as the final Zorathan counteroffensive formed, a question echoed across the stars. Who would stop humanity now? Fleets and armies once deemed invincible were slowly being proven otherwise. With every skirmish, every battle, and every retreat, humanity challenged what the galaxy had long accepted as truth. The Zorathian fleet, once the terror of the EA stars, was no longer the apex predator it had once been. Human ships, smaller and swifter, danced through enemy lines with uncanny precision, their pilots employing bold, erratic maneuvers that made a mockery of the larger, lumbering vessels. They exploited weaknesses no one else had noticed. Each minor victory shook the confidence of the Zorathan command, and whispers of doubt began to spread even among their most elite warriors. While the Zorathan Navy stumbled to adapt, humanity surged forward. Scientists, engineers, and strategists worked tirelessly, poring over every encounter, refining weapons, vessels, and doctrines. Humanity refused to stagnate. Defeats weren't setbacks, they were lessons. And this, more than anything, terrified the Zorathians, an enemy that didn't just fight, it evolved. Back on Earth, the mood was tense, but laced with a growing optimism. The leaders of the human resistance knew victory was still distant, but they also sensed momentum shifting. The Zorathians were no longer seen as unbeatable gods among the stars. Humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming a galactic power capable of challenging even the most feared empires. but the path forward was uncertain. Unlike the arrogant empires of the past, humanity didn't rely on brute force alone. They understood their enemy's strength wasn't just in firepower, but in psychological dominance. The Zorathians had ruled through swift, crushing victories. They couldn't comprehend a foe that would keep fighting no matter the odds, who refused to yield. As the warfront expanded, something unexpected stirred. Other species, long held in subjugation, began to take notice. Where once there had been fear, now there was curiosity, even admiration. They watched as the so-called primitive humans went head-to-head with the Zorathians, not with equal strength, but with unmatched will. One by one, these oppressed civilizations began reaching out, offering intelligence, resources, and volunteers eager to join the uprising. What began as humanity's struggle for survival was evolving into something far greater. The fight for galactic liberation. Each new ally added strength, legitimacy, and reach. The isolated resistance was becoming a broad coalition of freedom fighters. The Zorathians weren't just fighting humans anymore. They were facing a rising rebellion born from centuries of quiet oppression. The flame humanity had sparked was now igniting stars across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, once united in their disdain for humanity, faced a sobering reality. They had prided themselves on stability, on swiftly extinguishing dissent. Now, with humanity gathering momentum and suppressed races joining them, cracks were forming. Doubt seeped into the highest chambers of power. Counselor Rilker, a seasoned Zorathian general and architect of the failed Earth invasion, called for an emergency session. His voice, once steeped in arrogance, now carried uncertainty. "The humans," Rilker began, eyes sweeping across the chamber, "are not what we believed. We underestimated them, and now we pay the price." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Their fleets are small, but their tactics are beyond prediction. Their spirit is unbreakable. If we delay further, we risk losing control of the galaxy itself." A hush fell over the chamber. The smug confidence of the Council had vanished. They had mocked humanity's supposed frailty. Now they feared its resolve. Still, action was elusive. Any aggressive move risked igniting wider rebellion. Yet, to do nothing would cede more ground. The Empire stood at a crossroads. Meanwhile, humanity surged forward. Their fleets expanded rapidly, not only in size but in sophistication. But it wasn't just their machines that evolved, it was their mindset. Gone were the days of reacting. Humanity now fought proactively, wielding guerrilla tactics and psychological warfare with surgical precision. They struck where the enemy was weakest, vanishing before a counterattack could land. The Zorathians, used to brute dominance, found themselves on the defensive. Despite possessing superior numbers and firepower, they lacked what humanity possessed in abundance: the will to endure. The humans fought not for conquest or honor, but because they had no choice. Their very survival was at stake, and they would stop at nothing to protect it. Across the void of space, once ruled by Zorathian might, a new force was rising. It wasn't born of tradition or power. It was born of necessity, forged through hardship and adaptation. It was a force the galaxy had never encountered before, and its name was humanity. The message echoed across systems. Humanity had been underestimated, and now the price would be paid. With the next major offensive looming, Zorathian leaders were finally confronting the truth. The humans were no longer the minor nuisance they had once believed. They were a growing storm, unpredictable and relentless. The war wasn't over, but its trajectory had shifted, and the Empire's grip was loosening. The once stable Galactic Council now stood on the brink of fracture. They had ruled uncontested for millennia, their power seemingly eternal. But now, faced with rebellion from within and without, They were scrambling to retain control. Humanity's resistance was not just spreading, it was accelerating. Rilker stood once again before the council, frustration etched across his face. "They have struck at our core," he growled. "One of our most powerful dreadnoughts, obliterated in a single calculated strike. We assumed their reach was limited. We were wrong." His voice cracked with rare emotion. "They are not weak. They are coordinated, clever, and driven by something we cannot match. Desperation. If we do not respond with absolute force, we will lose everything." The council sat in silence. Their legacy of domination had not prepared them for this kind of war. Humanity wasn't trying to claim territory. They were trying to survive, and that made them infinitely more dangerous. They weren't fighting for glory. They were fighting for their world, their families, their future, and they were willing to pay any price for it. The realization settled like ash over the chamber. The humans weren't a problem to be solved. They were a force to be reckoned with. Back on Earth, humanity prepared for their boldest move yet. Intelligence had revealed the vulnerability of the Zorathian capital, the heart of their empire, previously considered impenetrable. Now, a daring plan was taking shape. A direct strike to cripple their central command, severing the enemy's ability to coordinate across star systems. It was risky. The most fortified world in the galaxy lay ahead. No enemy had ever breached its defenses. But the humans had already defied the impossible more than once. And now, they would do it again. Every ship in the fleet was called to readiness. Every captain, every crew member knew the stakes. If they succeeded, the empire would collapse. If they failed, humanity might not recover. There was no hesitation. As the fleet gathered for launch, there was only determination. Humanity had fought through hopeless odds before. They would do it again. Their technology had improved, but their greatest weapon remained the same: the will to survive. The Zorathians had ruled for ages, rewriting the laws of war to suit their might. But now, humanity was preparing to rewrite them again, with fire and steel. The first wave tore through the outer defenses like a blade, fast, efficient, ruthless. Human ships maneuvered with elegance and brutality, overwhelming the Zorathian forces before they could mount a response. Their strategies were unconventional, their assaults calculated with chilling precision. The defenders scrambled to respond, but it was already too late. The humans were inside, striking at the Empire's heart. Relentless and unstoppable, the K. Fleet advanced, leaving devastation in its wake. Each victory wasn't just a tactical win, it was a message. The galaxy's roles had reversed. Humanity was no longer prey. They were the predators. As the battle intensified, the Zorathians began to understand the scale of their mistake. They had mocked humanity, scoffed at their struggle, dismissed their threat. And now, the consequences were catching up to them, with brutal certainty. The unthinkable had happened. The Zorathian capital was under siege. Their empire, the dominant force for thousands of years, was collapsing under the weight of a rebellion led by those they had once scorned. The galaxy watched in awe and disbelief. The humans who had been ignored, ridiculed, and attacked were now the vanguard of a movement that would reshape history. The monster the galaxy had never expected was now wide awake, and it was winning. The Zorathians had believed their numbers and technology made them invincible, but humanity had turned their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. The Empire fought with arrogance, relying on overwhelming firepower and brute force. The humans, however, fought with strategy, adaptability, and an unyielding will. As the battle dragged on, panic spread through the Zorathian ranks. Their finest fleets defended the capital, yet no matter how many ships they deployed, the humans kept coming. Relentless, multiplying with each wave. General Rilcor, once scornful of humanity, stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching his fleet crumble. Chaos reigned. His crew shouted orders in vain, desperately trying to mount a defense, but Rilcor saw the truth. The tide had turned, his fists clenched as another fleet exploded in a firestorm. The outer defenses were gone, the humans were pushing deep into the capital. Their once impenetrable stronghold had been breached. "How is this possible?" Rilcor growled, frustration boiling in his voice. "We outnumber them. We outgun them. Why are they still standing?" A young lieutenant hesitated. "They fight like animals, sir. They never stop. They exploit every tactic, every weakness. They don't wait for us to make mistakes. They force them." Rilcor's gaze hardened. It was true. Humanity didn't follow patterns. Their chaos was tactical, deadly. Nothing like the wars the Empire had fought before. Back on Earth, humanity's leaders watched in silence as the attack neared its conclusion. The battle for the Zorathian capital was still raging, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had proven itself. A once insignificant species from a single blue planet now stood on the edge of galactic history. They were winning a war that no other race had dared to fight. President Clara Davis, leader of Earth's resistance, stood in the command center, eyes locked on the battle feeds. She had seen humanity rise before, but this was different. This was destiny. "We've come so far," she whispered, barely believing it. "We're going to win." But it wasn't just about victory. It was a message to the stars. Humanity, mocked and dismissed, had shown its true strength. No longer prey, no longer silent. They were a force. On the front lines, the human fleet surged forward. Their objective was clear: destroy the Zorathian heart of power. Every ship, every soldier had one mission: to end the Empire's ability to fight. And they were close. Zorathian defenses collapsed. Panic swept their lines. Rilcor gave his last order: "Retreat. We can't hold them." But it was too late. The core had fallen. The once mighty Empire was unraveling. Their fleet, decimated, fled. Humanity had proven itself the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The final assault was underway. The human fleet pressed deeper, targeting the command center. The Zorathians had underestimated Earth, and now they would pay. The battle reached its peak. Victory was within humanity's grasp. The empire that had ruled for centuries was crumbling before the fury of a species it once considered laughable. The humans had shattered the stars. As the last defenses collapsed, fire rained across the Zorathian capital. The once glorious city, of crystal towers and glowing domes, was reduced to ruin. Human ships hovered above the smoking wreckage, weapons still warm. The war wasn't over, but the message was clear. Humanity had won this round. For the first time in history, the Empire had been defeated on its own soil. No species had even dared try. But humans didn't just dare. They acted. Captain Alina Rhodes stood aboard the HSS Vindicator, watching the burning world below. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried the weight of all they had lost and all they had proved. "We didn't come to conquer," she said to her crew. "We came to survive. And now, the galaxy understands." No one spoke. They all knew this wasn't just a battle won, it was a shift, a reckoning. And it was only beginning. Across the galaxy, the once proud Galactic Council had fallen silent. No messages, no ships, no words. Their fear was louder than any weapon. They had mocked Earth. Now they realized their mistake. The species they'd ridiculed had crushed one of the oldest empires in existence, with fewer ships, fewer people, fewer allies. The silence of the council was deafening. On Earth, crowds gathered in stunned silence, watching the fall of the Empire unfold on massive screens. There were no celebrations, no cheering, just the quiet realization. Humanity had become something more, a symbol, a warning. President Davis stood before the Earth Assembly. Her words were brief, but carved into history. "We didn't start this war," she said, "but we ended it. And to those who come next, know this: we are not your prey. We are not your slaves. We are human. And if you come for us, we will fight, and you will lose." Her voice echoed across colonies, alien worlds, and shattered imperial systems. Even the survivors of the fallen empire heard and understood. In the ruins of his bunker, General Rilcor sat, broken and bleeding, surrounded by silent commanders. His armor cracked, his pride gone. "We mocked them," he said, "but the monsters we feared weren't real. The real monster? We never saw it coming." No one disagreed. Council spies recorded his words, his shame. The galaxy would remember. The age of fear and silence had ended. Humanity had changed everything, and the rest of the galaxy had to adapt or fall. But Earth wasn't celebrating. They were preparing. Humans understood something others forgot. Winning one war didn't mean peace. It meant attention. Now, the galaxy truly saw them, and others would come, seeking revenge, testing their strength, or trying to use them. But none would laugh again. As the last fires died on the ruined capital, the stars stretched outward, and across the galaxy, a truth spread like a shadow. Humanity had awakened. And the silence now was the calm before the next storm. After the Empire's fall, the galaxy changed. Not gradually, but all at once. Whispers of one name echoed across every system. Humans. They were no longer seen as fragile. They were the species that shattered giants. In the Galactic Council's deep space station, silence reigned. The chamber, once filled with political noise, now held only fear. Leaders of powerful species, the Alt, the Varnic, the Krell, watched. "Earth's flag wave over Zorathian ruins. Do we send a message?" one asked quietly. "To whom?" another snapped. "To the humans? And say what? Sorry we laughed at you?" "They don't need our words," someone muttered. "They've spoken with fire. They're a threat now." "No," an elder corrected. "They always were. We just refused to see it." Fear settled, not of war, but of change. The path the galaxy had walked for eons had split, and humans stood at the fork. On Earth, tension lingered. No parades, no cheers. The cost of victory was understood. Lives, trust, peace. President Davis met with the newly formed Human Stellar Alliance, a union of Earth, its colonies, and allies. Behind her, a screen lit up with offers: trade, protection, diplomacy. Former, "Enemies reached out. Isolated worlds called for help," but Davis wasn't smiling. "They're not coming to be friends," she said. "They're afraid." Commander Jules leaned forward. "Should we accept?" "We accept some. We watch others. And we remember, power brings enemies faster than peace brings friends." It wasn't bitterness. It was wisdom. In the dark outer rim, where no council rules reached, a fleet stirred. Ships black as void powered up for the first time in centuries. No symbols, no signals, just silence. Their leader, known only as the Veil, watched Earth's broadcast again and again. "They brought down the Zorathians," a commander whispered. "Should we fear them?" The Veil shook his head. "No. We study them, learn what makes them strong, and when the time comes, we use it." A new danger was rising, one born not of hate but jealousy, fear, control. On a distant colony called Aster Reach, children played with model ships. They pretended to fight, to fly, to protect. But one child stood apart, looking up at the stars. His name was Mao. If we're the strongest now, he whispered, who will try to take it from us? Even young minds knew what adults feared to say. Back in the council, panic turned to planning. A secret project was born. Project Silence. Its goal, not understanding, but control. A weapon to neutralize Earth's influence, without war. But they knew deep down, they were too late. Humanity had changed the galaxy, and nothing would return to how it was. In the final scene, Earth sent a message, broadcast across every system. President Davis's voice echoed, "We are not here to rule. We are not here to destroy, but if you threaten our people, know this. We won't run. We won't beg. We won't hold back. We are humanity, and we are not the joke of the galaxy anymore." As her words faded into the stars, billions listened, some in fear, some in awe, some in hate, but all in silence. The galaxy held its breath, because it now understood the truth. The deadliest species in the universe was real.